I have some thought questions for you today. I don't know exactly why all of you chose this topic to come learn about, but I want you to think, if you can, and open your mind and your heart and your spirit during the next 45 minutes to think about what is one relationship you want to improve. Maybe it's not even bad, but maybe it's not intimate. Maybe it's not connected in the way that you think you'd like, that doesn't meet your need to belong or feel secure. What have you tried so far? We have to use every faculty we have been given to grow our relationships. I had to laugh, but a friend of mine from growing up, he's got grown children now, but he actually created a family, he's not a financial person, but like a forecast with what I'm hoping to accomplish with my children and my family in the next, 5 years. And I was like, wow, I've done that for work, but have I done that for my family? Do I put my best faculties, my intellect, spirit, my drive to these issues that matter so much to me? Or am I just relying on my emotion and intuition to try to stumble along? So that's my first call to you is, yes, use all of your faculties to try to figure these things out. And then this last one, what would you give? What would you give? What kind of mental effort? What kind of study? What kind of humility? What kind of meekness would you demonstrate to create or to renew connection, understanding, and love in that particular relationship? It's going to take, do you remember if you were here yesterday, I had a slide, and you may have thought that's weird, of the Tough Mudder race. You have the lady climbing up there. I guarantee you, and just maybe saying from experience, some of my deepest and most important experiences have demanded the most rigor, emotionally, spiritually, and otherwise from me. Right? It has been at times like, okay, I think I can keep staying on, hanging on here, and then there's someone who maybe has pulled me up at that last minute. So again, just thought questions. Sorry, we went a little too fast. Okay, a woman, I'm calling her Ellen. Again, like I said, people call BYU and our center for a lot of different reasons. A woman named Ellen came to me. She was extremely distraught. Her daughter-in-law had cut off all communication with her. Her daughter-in-law was extremely upset. She had found out that Ellen had written this little grandchild who was 7. No, I think actually she'd already turned 8. A letter and had said, basically, Grandma would really like you to be baptized. The daughter-in-law, who had since left the church and had some hesitations, and who had openly told Ellen that they were going to wait and see what their daughter wanted to do, because that's what their family had decided, was furious. So in reaction, she basically said, Grandma, you're out. You can't come visit us. We're not going to come to your family reunions. We're not going to do anything. So Ellen comes in my office. She's crying, and she's like, I just want my grandchildren to be in the church. I want to know that they're going to have the blessings that I've had. And as we began to unravel this, we had to figure out what are the steps Ellen can take to reconnect, right? The daughter-in-law happened to be the gatekeeper to that relationship, but she still had a tentative relationship with her son too. I don't know if any of you have been in these types of situations, but I'm going to start with this, and I'm going to talk you through some of it, and we'll wrap up with a little bit of how Ellen and I worked together and how she created a pathway forward in something that looked like she had absolutely no control over, right? The very thing, that relationship with her granddaughter, was the very thing that was cut off from her, and she wanted to figure out how she could have some type of, even a neutral peace was acceptable to her. So that's Ellen. This may seem like a really stupid question, it's really boring, but what is communication? If I sent You and Eve, oh, sorry, you had it.
Something that never happens.
Okay, well, hopefully we can have it happen more. We often consider communication the fact that I have sent out a message. I left you a voicemail. Have I communicated with you? Maybe you got it, but what if you misinterpreted what I said? What if I was actually in a big rush and I left you a voicemail that just said, hey, call me right away. It's kind of brisk. I didn't really explain myself very much. You're like, oh, maybe she's mad about whatever happened. We often confuse communication with sending a message. The key with communication is to find out if you have communicated and the receiver has received it as it was intended, right? Think about that letter with Ellen. Was Ellen's effort, was she trying to shame her daughter-in-law? My guess is she wasn't trying to, but the daughter-in-law took it as she was trying to shame her into doing the right thing. And she didn't like that. She didn't like being forced to do something that wasn't necessarily authentic to her. Your communication tools. I was in Japan on my mission for 1.5 years, and I had to learn to be a little quieter and to listen a little bit more and watch people. From my experience, and this is not to stereotype too much, but I found that many of the people that I interacted with did not want to tell me no. They didn't want to show that, like, socially, that they didn't accept what I was saying, so that it would seem like they were saying yes. Like, I would say things like, well, do you believe what we're talking about? And I would see this, like, and I'd be like, after a while, I was like, I'm not quite sure. I don't know if that's quite sure. I'm quite sure about that. So you have a lot of different methods to communicate. We emphasize texting, emailing, calling on the phone, talking in person. If I have a problem with Kylie, I may come up and be like, Kylie, I know we've been frustrated with each other, and I try this really in-person kind of like brave, let's try to resolve it situation. I have people in my life that if I tried to do that, like today, my daughter her boyfriend broke up with her, they'd been dating for 1 year or so, and I wanted to know how the first day of high school went. And me, being mom, the mediator, I asked, well, how was it seeing him in class today? And she just said, see ya. She just left, and that was it. I mean, this was me like 2 hours ago, and just no communication, right? The fact that, hey, don't ask me about this, so I'm gonna have to back off and maybe be a little more subtle. Maybe walk with her and not ask the question, allow her to kind of let it come out as she wants. When she was little, the same child, if she had a bad day in elementary school, she'd actually write me a letter in the bus, hand it to me, and then walk off to her room. And I would read the letter. So you have a lot of choices. Sorry, I'm going to use you as a guinea pig, and I promise I am vaccinated and I have already had COVID. So if I come, I'm really short, right? Say I come up to you and I stand like this. What am I communicating? What could I be communicating? Dominance, power? Yes, I do. Anyway, but say I want to show Oliver a little bit of respect. What if I just back up a little bit and then I even like sit down? Why don't we use these tools? If Oliver comes to my house and I want to show him respect, maybe he's a really social, verbal guy, and I can be like, Oliver, you're so awesome. I love, you're so great. I'm so glad you're here. But maybe I could do the same thing if I led him into my dining room and I put him at the center seat, and I served him some food and I just listened to him talk to him about his day. That could serve the same message as me trying to over-verbalize. One is not necessarily better than the other, but the problem is we often over-rely on what we're used to, or how our family was, or what we think our personality is. Use the most, we're children of the most creative being in the universe. Expand what's possible, right? Okay, sorry, I didn't mean to dominate you.
No problem.
Or I could just be like, oh, sorry. Okay, anyway, yes.
What was that term you had used earlier? It was communicating versus what was the other thing? It was the when we mean to communicate, but in reality we end up. It was right towards the beginning.
Someone, sending a message? Okay, yeah. So communicating would mean send the message received and interpreted correctly. Okay, thank you. All right, so brief little thing on communication. We talked about conflict, contention, and peace yesterday. For those of you who are not here yesterday, I just wanted to make sure we were clear. Conflict is natural and inevitable. We heard from Elder Uchtdorf yesterday, you're just going to bump into each other. Whether it's opinions, preferences, styles, types of language, there's just going to be differences, and that's fine. It's okay. You don't have to be like me to have a good relationship with me. You don't have to agree on every single thing. It's okay. There's enough and to spare within our mercy and our understanding to allow for that buffer. Contention, we're angry about it. I can't believe you would even vote for a person like that. How many times have we said something like that? And then in our mind, the next thing we think about may be like idiot, bigot, right? It's like so automatic, the categorization, that person is not really a person anymore. They're just part of that group that I don't like what those people do. Those people, right? So contention can start with categorizing and pushing someone off to the side. Peace, like I said yesterday, is not just the absence of conflict. It has substance. It can be created. And our Savior has the way to create it. And I'm hoping today that with you learning these 5 conflict approaches, you'll see that you can be much more creative than you have been. You are not just your personality. You are not just how you were raised. I was that way for a long time. I don't know if you have ever read East of Eden by Steinbeck. The key message of that book, you got some really tough characters in there. You can change. You can change. That's the key message of the gospel of Jesus Christ. You can change. If the things you're doing right now are not working for you, if you are not having peace, if you are not having connection, you can change, right? You can't change somebody else, but if you change, it's very likely that other people's responses will change back to you, right? So we always want to wait maybe until the other person's ready, but if we do a slight shift, a bid of goodwill, you'd be surprised what can happen. Any thoughts on conflict or contention? Okay, good. So yeah, you brought it up, and it has been my main caution looking around at our society right now. Everything has become, we say identity politics. This is not just politics. This is identity warfare in just about every category you could come up with. And when you move into that area, people, like I said yesterday, do not want to negotiate. So you've got to somehow bring it down to my needs. Like, if it's a political thing, like, what is my real deal? Like, am I worried about, national security? What are those things? Like, bring it down instead of just finding a tribe, okay? So tribalism is a whole other thing that we can talk about, but are you acting as a tribe, or are you looking at your core individual needs? Someone before class asked me, well, how do you resolve conflict within yourself? It's a lot of the same thing that we're going to talk about today. I approach myself. There are things I know I need to work on, and I may pace it out. I may seek help, like a third-party collaborator. Okay, I know I have this bad habit. Can you help me with it? And we'll talk about specifics on Friday. I'm sorry, some people probably aren't able to be here Friday. The best book that I found for addressing needs and maybe setting some parameters is Nonviolent Communication. That just happens to be my personal preference. Yes? Oh, that's East of Eden. So it's an old fiction novel, I guess, by Steinbeck, John Steinbeck. Okay, The Savior's teaching on peace. I had a couple other scriptures from yesterday. Today, I wanted to move you towards Doctrine and Covenants 105. So, well, actually, let's start with the top. That may be a good idea. So, and I give you these commandments because of the disputations which have been among you. And blessed are ye if you have no disputations among you. That can seem really tough. Have you ever been in a situation where you have a conflict and you're like immediately feel guilty? Like, I'm a bad person because I have this conflict. I think it's very ingrained in our culture to not want conflict. Disputations, I would say, and I don't mean to, this is, I have a Sunday school teacher always stands in the corner if he's not like sure it's pure doctrine. But disputation sounds like contention. If I have a difference with you, how often does that happen? It's common. If I'm counseling, even like in a presidency, a Relief Society presidency, we can have different ideas, and I wouldn't necessarily have to call it disputation. It could just be, hey, we don't necessarily have the same ideas, right? That's a different frame. So when the Savior came to the Nephites after he was resurrected, they were disputing baptism, right? So that was very, it makes sense that he would address that specifically and say, hey, there is actually a whole structure we've set up here with, priesthood keys to be able to address that. Let's not be fighting about this. And then in Doctrine and Covenants, sue for peace, not only to the people that have smitten you, but also to all people, and lift up an ensign of peace and make a proclamation of peace unto the ends of the earth, and make proposals for peace. This is not just the UN. You may need to I need a proposal of peace in my house. Like, we have a whole computer plan, and there's often warfare about, mom's got the computers, whatever it is, right? I make proposals for peace unto those who have smitten you according to the voice of the Spirit which is in you. So according to the voice of the Spirit. You may wonder why this last scripture is in bold and bigger than the others, because it's my favorite scripture for mediation. This was actually the Savior speaking to his disciples. This is New Testament times, and he's trying to prepare them to go out into the world, where it's a battle of words. It's a battle of different philosophies of life. And he says, be therefore as wise as serpents and as harmless as doves. Use all of the things God has taught you in any area of your life and apply it as harmless as a dove, meaning with gentleness, kindness, love unfeigned, to try to work through these issues. So that's just something that's meant a lot to me. I want you to consider, and this is what Elder Uchtdorf was bringing up yesterday when he said, sometimes Jesus responded verbally to a conflict. Sometimes he actually, what did he do with the woman taken in adultery? Do you remember what he did? He knelt down. Do you remember what I did with Oliver? There's something to having all those choices of gestures, right? Sometimes he avoided, and that didn't mean he was weak. Sometimes he accommodated. I find it very surprising. His mother, who he had great respect for, asked him to perform a miracle, and he said, my time has not yet come. Like, his ministry had not personally started, but he accommodated her, meaning he acted so that she could have what she needed or desired in that moment. And then competing. We often think of competing like it's the NFL, like you have to be aggressive and angry and throw people to the ground. Competing just means you stand up for what you want, what you think is important. I could compete in silence and just stand here. I could be sitting at the lunch counter at Woolworths and just saying, I'm a person. Will you please serve me food? That's competitive. So it doesn't mean it's aggressive, hostile, or for negative purposes. It just means you're standing. And the Savior did that often. He was often competing with the philosophies of the day, saying, hey, I think it's fine that it is good to heal on the Sabbath day. So I'm going to take that forbidden spit, I'm going to mingle it with clay, and I'm going to put it on the blind man's eye and heal him. Because I want you to know that that is not something that's okay. There should be no law prohibiting someone from healing on the Sabbath day. That's competitive, right? So I hope in your own scripture studies, you'll begin and look through the scriptures and see where the Savior is competitive, avoidant, accommodating. I didn't find very many compromises, actually, which I thought was interesting. In the Old Testament, there is some like negotiating. I don't know if you remember with like Moses, and like they're going back and forth a little bit. But after that, I haven't seen very much compromise. And I take that as he came to minister and not to be ministered to, right? He had the authority to lay down the truth. So here are the 5 choices. And I'm going to try to explain it in a layperson way so it makes sense. So we're going to go over each of these individually. So if you look on the bottom, it says cooperative. This means I'm trying to help you get what you want. Assertive up here on the left means I'm trying to get what I want. So if I'm in the low corner of avoiding is what? Not assertive, and it's not cooperative, right? Nobody's really going to get their needs met in the avoiding stage. Compromising is splitting the difference. We're pretty familiar with that. Accommodating is I'm highly cooperative. I'm going to help you get what you want, but I'm going to give up what I want, right? So just, it takes a little bit. I'm sorry, I've seen this slide probably like 1,000 times, but just keep that in mind. Each has its place. One is not better than the other. In certain situations, I would be a fool to collaborate if I don't care about the relationship, I don't have any time, and the issue is insignificant. I simply should not take the time to collaborate. But if I'm in danger, someone's following me, that's not the time to say, hi, I'm Emily, I'm a mediator. I'd love to work out the issues that we're having between us. Oh, you wanted my money? Okay, sorry, here you go. Right? Each situation has its own purpose, and each style has its place. So, what is the goal? I call it conflict fluency. The idea that you are able to use each of the 5 approaches interchangeably depending upon your goals in the situation. Ideally, my husband was working from home today. Ideally, I would be using a few of these approaches in our different interactions. If it's something we talked about last night and we already made a decision, I'd just say, hey, I might compete and just say, we already talked about that, we're good, right? We have a construction project going on right now, and he was trying to negotiate, like, I'll do it. I'm like, you'll never get it done, right? So we're negotiating, but I've got to use different strategies every time I negotiate, right? So even with the same person, a loved person, a stranger, I'm using a variety of approaches. And that's just what I call conflict fluent. So, avoiding. What are we actually doing when we avoid? And forgive me if this is a little wordy. This was me. This is like when I first got married, I'm like, oh no, we're fighting. Dun, 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 dun. I'm running away. And my husband's like, where are you going? I'm like, I gotta go think. I don't wanna say anything I'm gonna regret. So I was a fleer, right? And every once in a while he'd be like, so are you gonna run away now? I'm like, no, I can stay here, I'm good. I'm like learning how to talk, like it caught me off guard, but I wanna talk through it. So when we avoid, we don't directly address the subject or the people involved. Again, this is not bad, this is just what it is, okay? We may change the topic of conversation when it becomes uncomfortable. We may stop responding or discussing issues. We may turn away. We may hang up the phone. Anyone ever done that? That's not very helpful, but sometimes we do that, like, okay, I'm good. We become non-committal and even end any type of contact. We don't openly seek to satisfy our own needs or the other person's needs. I was going to have little thought questions for you if you could try to identify yourself. There's a self-assessment on the last page, which I hope you'll just take a look at, so you can just get a general idea. But be aware, you may have different styles in different types of relationships. Say I'm at work and my boss brings up a conflict, I may go to this a lot more rapidly than with my husband or my child or in my church calling or with my girlfriends. So when you take this assessment, make sure you identify what relationship you're thinking about, and it will be probably a little truer to what you actually do. Yes?
Any wisdom on how we can root out that kind of shifting between circles?
I would actually say it's not bad to shift. It actually just demonstrates you have different goals, right? If it makes you feel like you're not authentic, that's different. Like I feel like it's taken me some time to get more used to shifting, and then I'm like, oh, why am I always running from this type of situation? So that's more, if it's more problematic, then I'd pin down why I'm running in a certain situation. But it's not bad. Like I would just say, again, the idea of conflict fluency is I'm traveling in a land I'm with Kylie, I'm with this person, and I switch gears, and that's okay. That doesn't mean I'm a chameleon. It just means I'm sensitive to my different relationships. Any other thoughts on that one? Yes, sorry.
No, I just have a request. If somebody has a comment, will you repeat it?
Oh, yes. Okay, perfect. Okay, so her comment was, if somebody has a comment, I'm going to repeat it, right? Okay, excellent. Okay, let's move. I want to make sure we get through it because we just have about 25 minutes. So I'm going to try to go through comments. If they're something kind of personal, please ask me after, but I love discussion. It's one of my favorites. Okay, so avoiding, not bad or good. Honestly, not bad or good. There are pros and cons. And these are some of the pros and cons. Like I said, I lived in South Chicago going to graduate school, and the night, I'm walking home from campus, and I hear heavy footsteps behind me. That is not my time to collaborate. I just got through my 3 security doors, and I got in my apartment, and I was safe, right? Or, so if I am at risk of physical or mental abuse when the situation is spiraling out of control, get out, right? Think of Joseph of Egypt. In the moment of temptation, sometimes you just got to run. You got to get out. It doesn't mean you're going to keep running forever, but in that situation, maybe you need to just get out and then address it if you have, and then seek some tools. So it allows us reflection time. Has anyone ever brought up something that's just really tricky, and you're like, I'm actually not sure what I think about that? It can be very graceful and compassionate to avoid pushing someone when you know they're not ready, right? I can actually, and I'm thankful sometimes too when people give me a little bit of buffer time so that I can process something. And then, like I said, 3 is related. You or the other party just may not be ready. With Ellen, I could tell it was very raw and there was some mourning going on. She just lost this relationship with her granddaughter, and it was devastating. She had to mourn to be able to come to a point where she felt constructive, right? Because when she was mourning, she was just going to be like, maybe over-pleading, maybe over-accommodating when there needed to be more of a collaborative effort to come back together again. Does that make sense? So avoiding, just don't leave forever. Don't be like Forrest. Do you remember Forrest Gump running off? And then he just says, I got tired. Sometimes, actually, that's a good point. Are you tired? Are you tired of running? I got tired of running. I was like, I'm running, but nothing's resolved, right? I want things to be different. I don't want to just be alone without the conflict in front of me, right? Yeah.
Can't you just set a time where you're going to talk about it later when you're both rested or you've thought about it?
Oh, for sure. Yes.
So it's not like you're avoiding it, it's just like make a plan to fix it.
Yes. Okay, so she brought up the idea that you may not be inevitably avoiding it. You can set up a time to talk, and that is definitely within what we're talking about. Okay. I had a comment? Okay, sorry. Let's keep going. Ideal conditions for avoiding. It's potentially dangerous. The issue is simply not important to you. I know I'm right, so I just have to say it. Don't say it. If it doesn't matter, don't say it. Who cares? Let it go. You don't have to be right every time, right? Like, that's what I try to tell my kids. Like, I don't know if any of you are the youngest. I'm the middle, but my youngest, I cannot tell you how many times her older brothers and sister have said, I already know that. That's so dumb. I'd be like, just don't say anything. If she's saying, well, I learned how to do blah, blah, blah. Oh, I learned that so long ago. Like, you don't need to say that. It's not just kids that do that. Adults do it a lot. We want to be right. We want to look like we're all in control. If it doesn't matter, just let it go, okay? We have little sayings like pick your battles, but this is not even pick your battles. Just allow the other person to have some dignity. Allow them to have some dignity, please. I guess I've seen that in other cultures where they're so much better at just saving face. They're not being fake. You're actually giving someone a gift by not confronting them on something that just doesn't matter, okay? So that's my beef about avoiding. So if I have no chance of achieving my goals, say I have a beef with President Worthen and I'm a little peon staff worker like I was at the center, I can try to advocate and make some progress here, but that's a long battle, right? I may not have a lot of power to immediately change something, so I need to decide how much effort I want to put into it. I'm not saying I shouldn't put effort into it, but I need to consider the possibility of achievement. And then sometimes it's a complex situation, and it's not going to get solved. If I'm at my in-laws family reunion, and I know there's kind of an issue among the family, I'm an in-law, we're all like playing on the lake, maybe now is not the time to bring up, X. This is not the forum to do it. So I need to be as wise as a serpent, as harmless as a dove. I'm like, this is not the right situation, but maybe this is. And I'm going to think about and be creative about that. Okay, sorry, we don't have much time for the thought questions. Ask yourself, when do I usually avoid? So pick a situation. How's it working for me? How's it working for me? Am I just running like Forrest? And then I'm just like, I'm tired and nothing's changed, right? Are there things you're running from that actually demand your interaction, but you're maybe afraid, you don't know what to do, somebody's chasing you and you just keep running? They're like chasing you, it's a spiral. Avoiding. We're pretty familiar with it. Accommodating, and I'm going to go a little bit quickly. Accommodating is very similar to avoiding, but we are actively giving in to other people's demands. Okay? So avoiding, we're just kind of like not addressing our needs or the other person's needs. But in accommodating, I had a mother with a child. I don't know if you've ever been on a hike with a kid that's like maybe like 5, 6, and they start getting tired and they're like, carry me. And you're like, oh my gosh, I'm already tired myself. So you stick them on your back, right? I'm the parent or I'm the caregiver, so I feel like I have to or I need to accommodate. I'm the employee, and so my boss asked me to do something, and I'm like, because he's my boss, like I have to do it, right? There are social situations where it's demanded, but we address others' needs and interests rather than considering our own. And remember, with avoiding, you're not actively seeking anyone's interests. But accommodating, I'm trying to give you what you want, okay? Pros and cons. It may help create a sense of harmony. It may confirm that you are very generous. You are a true, loving person because you always help bring the group together. You give up what you need so that everybody's happy. Mom didn't get to eat. There's a really funny comedy skit about Mom's Christmas. I don't know if you've seen it, but she gets a robe, right? Mom spent her whole vacation getting everybody else all ready, and in the end, everybody buys Mom a robe, and then she looks at the tag, and it was on sale, right? Like, sometimes over-accommodating can lead to some bad things. Sometimes it's required, but if you don't take your own needs and desires into account, this may actually backfire on you. It may alienate you in your relationships, and it may allow people to walk all over you, and not to mention, it may cause you to explode. There's this lovely term, Gretchen Rubin, she does a podcast, and she's written a book, but she has this term called obliger fatigue. So she calls accommodating obliging, like I'm giving into you, and it's when you're like, if you ask me one more thing, I'm gonna explode. And those of us, I can see little laughs, those of us who do it, you know when the explosion is gonna come. I'm like, no more, right? You are gonna do it all yourself. I'm not gonna drive you anymore, whatever it is. So you have to be careful. Because if I always give in to your needs, you may not even know what my needs are. I may be presenting to you the image I want you to have of me, but it's not really me, so I will never feel close to you because you don't know who I really am. I'm just showing you what I think you want, but it's not even real. So it's like a fake relationship, okay? So accommodation, and that happens, I would just say, in our LDS culture fairly often. Anytime we have like kind of a big group like that where we want to be loving and be perceived as kind and gracious, be aware, Vesuvius may await you, right? And that you may not feel connected to anyone. You may think, wait, I'm being so kind. I'm offering you this. But it's not feeding your soul because it's not feeding what's really in there, right? It's feeding this character of who you are. Rubin, R-U-B-I-N. Ideal conditions. I don't have much chance of getting what I want, so fine, I'll give in. Outcomes are not important. I don't care if we eat Chinese food or Mexican food, that's cool, like I'm good. But I have to be honest. If I really do, you know you have accommodated in a bad way if you bring it up again to like push on the other person. And they're like, why didn't you tell me? So then it creates this weird friction where like, I actually asked you about it, but then you said yes, and now you're mad at me because we went to what I wanted to do, right? So be very careful about, do you really care about the outcome or not? Because you know if you remember it. And this was a really interesting insight I had, because I was trying to come up with examples of when I had accommodated and it was appropriate. I couldn't even remember very many cases because they were things that weren't important to me. But the ones where I shouldn't have accommodated, I remember them because I'm resentful, right? Like, I'm like, why did I do that? I actually care about that. I'm so mad, right? Like, there's a natural gut instinct of like kind of, not aggressiveness, but just like resentment. So when do you usually do it? When does it work for you? And when is it not working for you? And forgive me, we're gonna hammer through these. We got 15 minutes. Okay, compromising. I have an orange. The only reason I have that orange is we're splitting the difference. Say, what's your name?
Lori.
Okay, Lori, I don't know if you like to cook, but Lori's gonna make some muffins that need orange rind. I'm coming home, we're roommates, and I just want to eat the orange inside. There's only one orange, it's sitting on the table. Instead of having a conversation, we're both like, dang it, like that was my orange. We're like, okay, fine, you can have half. We split it in half, so Lori gets half of the rind she needs for her recipe, and I get half of the orange that I wanted to eat. And we're each left with half of the thing that we don't need or want. So compromise is when you really quickly make a decision, you go 50-50, and that's it. Everybody knows how to, we're not all mathematicians. I can do 50%, right? We split it, and we usually give up something that we wanted on both sides. So it can be win-win, but it also can be lose-lose. Because I wasn't patient enough to have a 30-second conversation with Lori and say, you know what, I actually just want to eat the inside of the orange. Are you okay? And she's like, well, could I just grind it and then you have the orange? You can eat it after when I'm done? Cool. 30-second conversation. We all laugh. You're like, okay, of course, that's stupid. Do we do that in our own lives? Do we split the difference without having a conversation? And then we're both feeling like, I kind of got shafted there. Like, I didn't really get what I needed or wanted in that situation. So I've so quickly wanted to get the conflict over that I just split it. But if I had more of a relationship and I talked to Lori, we might find that we both could get what we need, right? So we often turn to compromise when collaboration fails. So collaboration's the last, but if people will not collaborate with you, you usually have to shift into compromise, right? That's a little bit the triaging of how it works in negotiation. So pros and cons. Compromising's fast. You don't really need to communicate much. It's culturally acceptable, and it's easily understood by most people. Cons. Each party has to give up something to reach a resolution. You may only get part of what you want, and if it's habitual, it may reflect an inability to connect on a deeper level. Say with my husband, every time we're just like, I don't really want to have this argument, and we just like, fine, we'll go where you want to go this vacation, and I'll go next time. Like, that can work, but if it happens every time, and then the other person on that vacation that they don't want to be on, it's like, if we have to go to another museum, I'm seriously, Like, so we have these things where, yes, I could give a free gift offering. I will go on a fishing trip with you. I did catch a seagull while we went. The little shipmate was very upset with me, right? So we can do these compromises, but if it's habitual every single time in your most important relationships, you might be missing some real key areas for intimacy. Like, I might need to connect and have a little bit more depth rather than just making that conflict go away as fast as possible, okay? Any thoughts on that? Okay, we're gonna keep speeding through, sorry. Ideal conditions. I have to move fast. We gotta make something fast. Okay, you go first, I'll go second, right? Like, you're just trying to make sure there's a fast plan. The parties will not talk to you. Think about my Ellen story. The daughter-in-law doesn't want to talk to her. I can't collaborate with someone that's not willing to communicate with me. So I'm going to have to come up with some other way to deal with this person. And complete achievement of goals is not important, or it's not possible. Our whole, even democratic government is set up to create compromise, right? But what are we doing right now? We're resisting even compromise. We're doing a winner takes all. And that obviously creates a lot of friction, right? So one thing I want you to think about, this is just a side note, in your family life or in your work life, there are systems set up sometimes to create compromise. Like, what is the system to resolve differences? It may be simply, I went to a department at BYU that came to me because they were wondering what to do because they were having a lot of conflict. And I said, well, what's your policy for when this type of issue comes up? And they said, well, we just push it back down. And I was like, that probably doesn't go very well, does it? And they're like, no, it never goes away. So you have to look at the structure. Are we assuming conflict will come? And what are we assuming the byproduct will be? Is it compromise? Is it collaboration? Do we just avoid stuff? Or do we just give in? If a student complains, we just say, yeah, you're right. And then we gratify whatever you wanted, right? So competing. Why would I put a picture of the civil rights movement? So this was a 1968 sanitation protest. I am a man. Why would another human being put up a sign and protest saying, I am a man? Yes, there's a hand up there.
Their needs aren't being met. Their needs or wants aren't being met.
Yeah. Do we have a history in even our Constitution that addressed this issue? Wasn't there there are very serious things that were written in policy that basically would say, you're not the same, right? So this is competing. This is a peaceful civil process, but this is competing for an idea. So we actively seek to reach our own personal goals, especially when it appears that others will not cooperate with us. We most clearly demonstrate our power and our abilities to achieve personal goals. We do not need to be hostile or aggressive to use the competing approach. It simply means assertive, right? Do you remember on our original graph? Remember, it was high in assertive, low in cooperation. I'm going for what I believe it needs to be, kind of regardless of what you think about it. Pros and cons of competing. You get what you want quickly if you don't care about what other people feel or they think. You strongly demonstrate your commitment to a position, and you may help establish your dominance in a social setting. What if, with my children, I continually compete about when they get computers, which I have been doing. I have been competing. What if I do it all the time? Every single issue, they come to me like for permission, and I'm just like, no, not doing that. Nope. It may create resentment and defiance. And then it may feed some narcissistic or aggressive tendencies in the person who's competing, and it may teach others to compete back when they have power. What happens, I have a boy who was the same height as me at the beginning of COVID, and now he's like 5'10". I can't pick him up. I can't use the same kind of power that used to work to get him to do other things, right? Not that I'm like whipping him or anything. I'm just like, even like picking him up. Like, I can't do that. So he could now do that to me, right? We can see that throughout society, that this power battle, right? It keeps going. So it may just switch who's in power. And others may go around your back. I don't know if you've had this, but I had a funny experience. So I thought it would be a good thing that my kids didn't eat too much sugar. So I put a limit. Like, you could have a treat after lunch. And then when my youngest was 4, I was cleaning out her bedroom, and I guess what I found under her bed? It was like 100 candy wrappers. Like, it was like hilarious. Like, it was like, of course, this person was just like, and I questioned her. I was like, why are there all these candy wrappers? And she's like, I like sugar. And I was like, okay, like, okay, that makes sense. You got a lot of sugar under there. But I can have my rule, but if I'm too hard on it, or I'm not even like talking to the person about what they want, it may backfire on me. So just be aware. It may not be candy, it may be something else. Ideal conditions. You have to make a decision quickly. Our options are restricted. There's nothing to lose by pushing. I've had experience, one of my class assignments in graduate school, so I took a class on persuasion, and you're like, that's a weird class. All of my assignments, I had to go persuade people to do stuff for me. So I had to persuade my doctor, because they had given me this treatment that wasn't very effective for my skin, because I've had skin cancer, and I had to go complain using these principles of persuasion to see if they would treat me again. And I never do that. I don't like doing that. And I went, and it was the weirdest thing. The doctor was like, yeah, sure, schedule it with my assistant. And I was like, wow, I didn't know that worked. So some of us compete all the time, and some of us don't compete when we should be competing. Why not ask, right? There's a fly in I remember I had a fly in my salad, and I was like, oh, I guess I'll just like not eat it and maybe eat some more bread. And then my friend was like, just go ask him for another salad. And I was like, I don't want to be that lady. But I did, and they brought me a new salad. So like, who knows? Just try out something new. If you don't compete ever, you might be surprised by being polite about asking for what you need. You might get somewhere. So, same questions. When do you do it? Okay, I'm so sorry. Like, maybe we might go 5. Are we okay if I go 5 minutes overtime? So, collaborating. I always put this at the end, but this should really maybe be the beginning, because it's the least used approach, because it demands the greatest skill. Okay? You should not be collaborating in every situation with every person, but you need to know how to do it, because you're missing out if you don't know how to do it. So when we collaborate, we put effort into effectively communicating, right? I actually just really want to eat that orange. Oh, okay, like that's cool. Like, let me just use it, right? Like, it can be even a simple conversation of stating need. Too often, and hopefully you'll be here on Friday, too often we go into a apparent conflict, and we just demand what we want, but we don't talk about need. Because if you understood that I just, wanted that, bit of the orange, you're like, okay, that's fine, right? Or if you want it too, we can figure out another way. But we take time to listen. We talk through it. We brainstorm. We decide together how our problems should be solved. We don't take it over. one of my most painful church experiences was being in I think maybe I talked about this, but a Relief Society presidency, and I was asked what I wanted like to do in the calling, and the funniest thing was to have the response be, well, that's not what you're going to be doing. I've already decided. And I remember I was like, why did you ask? Then I felt foolish for sharing my real thoughts because I wasn't going to get to do that anyway. So don't pretend to collaborate and then compete with somebody or tell them what to do, right? If you're going to collaborate, actually collaborate, call it what it is, and do what that is. We take time, right? We show greater commitment to the relationship and understanding that both sides matter. That little girl who likes sugar matters, and that mom who doesn't want her to eat sugar matters. And according to kind of skills and faculty, I have to adjust. So, pros and cons. It helps build relationships with important people in your life. It may create win-win outcomes. Win-win, that's kind of like a cliche term. It just means both people get basically full satisfaction of what they need and want. Remember, with compromise, you're usually kind of like cutting out some things that you really wanted, and you're like, okay, fine, for the conflict to be over, I'll just do it. Balance is power. As a mediator, my job is to help people collaborate and to balance power. When one person's yelling at the other, I actually say, excuse me, I'm not comfortable with you yelling. Would you please lower your voice? And let's each respect each other. So I'm like a coach, a referee in a collaboration. It's hard. When your emotions are heightened or you're Vesuvius, you've over-accommodated and you have a lot to say, it helps to have a buffer. But that's the idea of balancing power is with collaboration. Demonstrate respect, expands creativity and possible innovative solutions. These key points. Please do not collaborate over who does the dishes every night. That's ridiculous. Set up a wheel, have a conversation, make some compromises, go for it. But don't spend your collaborating time on issues that don't matter. It's not always worth the effort. You have to have trust, and it requires decent communication skills. And unfortunately, both people have to care. They don't have to care the same amount, but they have to care somewhat. Right? I can try to collaborate with you, but you can just shut me down. So I have to accept that, and I may have to backtrack to another communication style, another approach. Ideal conditions. Power is reasonably balanced. Reasonable is kind of that's within, a spectrum. Both value the long-term relationship. Both parties display cooperative behavior. Before we started, I talked about that couple that I mentioned yesterday. I actually very firmly told both of them, we're not talking about marriage, we're not talking about divorce. We're just talking, can you talk to each other without hurting each other, right? So that's what we were collaborating about. I wasn't about to try to collaborate their whole marriage divorce. That's gigantic, super emotional. But I could work with them on trying to define what good communication looks like between the two of them. Does that make sense? So sometimes we have to parcel down our conflicts and look at the pieces we could collaborate about, the pieces we could avoid, the pieces we could perhaps accommodate, compete, or compromise with. And you have enough time. Oh, I know, I'm at time. Okay, if we're good, I'm going to go quick. So when should you collaborate? So I'm just going to focus on this right side. The same issue keeps coming back up. You're skirting the issues, you're avoiding, you're accommodating, you're compromising, you're competing, and the issue will not go away. You don't want to have the conversation. You don't want to, you're do I really have to, be dragged through this whole thing? That's usually your sign. Put in the time, baby. It's worth it, right? And then the relationship is important to both people. It may not be as important to both people, but it has to at least be somewhat important to both people. And then the issue, it's important enough to take the time to work through it. Both parties are in the mindset to work with, not against, and that sometimes you need a helper to be able to do that. And then you may need a third party to help you collaborate. There is no shame in getting help. Honestly, there is no shame in getting help. It is hard. When you've had years of patterns of behavior and communication, you may need assistance. That's totally fine. If you need to leave, you're welcome to leave. I'm just going to go through these last things, and I want to tell you about Ellen. So Thomas and Kilman, you see in the source down here, they're conflict theorists, pretty well known in the academic world for studying conflict. But I modified a few of their questions, and this is going to take some more thought for later on. But I want you there. It's a way to triage. Okay, is this situation way too stressful already? Is it simple or complex? How important is it? Is there enough time? Is there enough trust? Do we have the skills? And then I'm going to move you to, if you got a picture, I hope that's good enough. Ellen. Ellen and I talked through quite a bit the things that were troubling to her. She needed to take some time to think things through. She was extremely hurt. So a little bit of downtime to avoid and reflect. And we worked together to go through her needs. She wanted the whole thing back like it was before. She wanted it all back all at once. And I said, well, you have your relationship with your son, your relationship with your daughter-in-law, your relationship with your grandchildren. You have the desires for the church. So we had to triage which was the most important. So she's like, right now, I think the most important is that my daughter-in-law knows that I respect her and that I would just like to see my granddaughter, even if it's just in a family context, like some kind of reunion. So she picked the main goals, and then we looked at how that would be possible to get there. So she started I actually walked her down into the BYU bookstore, and I bought her Nonviolent Communication. And I said, I really want you to focus on what you need, and I want you to take time to think about what your daughter-in-law needs. She had spent most of her grief and mourning thinking about what she wanted and what she was missing, and she had very, very little information about what her daughter-in-law was experiencing. So she did also invite her son and talked with her son a little bit, who could share a little bit of the daughter-in-law's experience and perspective. So she gained some insight into how it was a negotiated needs situation. It wasn't just her, and her daughter-in-law had some beef too. Like when I found out how the daughter-in-law felt about it, she had some reasons to be hurt as well. Interestingly, she started where she was, and I got a letter from her about 4 or 5 months later, and she said, I've read the book, I've reached out, my son has visited us with, the grandchildren, not with my daughter-in-law yet, but I'm giving her time, and I've apologized for the things that I've learned that I didn't know that I did. I didn't mean to be hurtful, but I've written it. So that's all I know about what ended up with Ellen. And then last point, sorry, because this one actually is important. Takeaways. Each approach is legitimate and useful in different situations. They're not bad or good, they're just different. They're useful. Avoid using just one approach with all conflicts. Do not excuse yourself and say, oh, it's just my personality. I'm just an avoider. I just keep running, or I'm a hothead. I don't buy it. I actually think that's a total cop-out. Think about my ability to change, right? East of Eden, the Savior's ideal that we can change, and learn how to collaborate so you have the opportunity to use that in the right situations. And then the United States Institute of Peace, that's USIP, that's the conflict styles assessment, so you can kind of see maybe a little bit what your tendencies are. But sorry to go over time. Thank you so much for being here.